Yo, how's it going everybody? You got Sketch here and welcome back to the channel. On today's episode we're looking at Yu Suzuki's newest release that initially began as an iPhone arcade game that eventually morphed into a full release, having many of the hallmarks of franchises like Space Harrier and Panzer Dragoon. Add in a healthy dose of psychedelic and unexpected inhabitants and environments and you've got an on-rail shooter that feels pulled straight out of the arcades of the early to mid 90s and 2000s. We're checking out Air Twister, developed by EastNet and published by ININ, releasing to iOS in 2022 and coming to consoles in November of 2023. You take the role of Princess Arch and move along the world of Air, which is being attacked by the evil Vanguard. These ops come through and smoke your entire squad, leaving only the princess armed with a crossbow and various animals of the kingdom. You'll fly into battle and take back your home planet, all set to the off-the-wall backdrop reminiscent of the Fantasy Zone, so get ready. Gameplay-wise, you've got a 3D on-rail shoot-'em-up that will immediately feel familiar to the Space Harrier games, letting you move around the screen, in the air, and on the ground, blasting anything that moves. You've got your crossbow that lets you fire as fast as you can pull the trigger, and holding the fire button will lock on enemies similar to Panzer Dragoon. You'll battle through 12 stages where everything is trying to take you down, and carving through waves of enemies and hazards will be the key to survival. You'll move through each stage deleting as many enemies as possible, leading into the boss fights at the end of the level. These all have skippable cutscenes to each encounter before they start, and these are pretty fun intros to battles, and you'll see some reminiscent designs like those of the Space Harrier games as well. While it's not a direct sequel on paper, the influence and style of it is very prominent. This plays just like Space Harrier with the exception of the lock-on mechanics, so if you're familiar with those games, this will feel comfortable right away. Where this sets itself apart, however, is the abilities you pick up through repeated play and buy with stars gained during play sessions. Stars can be used on the world map, which will let you purchase upgrades and move along the islands until you run out of currency or finish the map. You can buy additional target lock-ons, stronger weapons, abilities like bullet time and smart bombs that clear minor enemies off screen, cosmetics and lore excerpts. These upgrades make Arch very powerful after just a few runs, and the further you go, the more powerful you'll become. Though you also have the option of running the game with no upgrades as well, so you can control the difficulty in a variety of ways if you wish. You can stack hit points or hearts instead of the one-hit deaths of Space Harrier, but once those points are gone, the game is over. The story mode will let you pick up on the stage where you last went down, but the arcade mode has to be done in one sitting and with no continues. At the end of each stage, you get bonus points for defeating bosses quickly, hitting all formations, and not taking damage. Bonus points will add to your HP, and trying to optimize each level will keep you alive longer, especially once the gloves come off and Air Twister really starts throwing those hands right back at you. Every few stages are bonus rounds where you try to shoot as many non-lethal enemies as possible to get more HP, and much like Space Harrier, these parts come in clutch since you have to complete the game in one credit. The arcade and extra modes follow suit with needing to be cleared in a single run, but your upgrades from the story mode don't all carry over, but you can still gain stars to buy upgrades and go for high scores. The difficulty isn't too crazy to start, but on the first few runs, you will get smoked, especially once heavy enemy formations come in along with the more complex boss encounters, several of which will likely light you up. While upgrades make each run gradually easier, getting you closer to clears, still expect a challenge regardless of how powerful you might be. Graphics-wise, Air Twister runs on the Unreal Engine 4, and Yu Suzuki and his team certainly pull a lot out of this technology. This has the feel of an arcade game through and through, and it has some really sick polygonal sprite work, and the environments are easy on the eyes even when things are getting active. The screen can get hectic with a lot of enemies and obstacles to dodge, which all look great as you move along the world of Air. Environments are as you would expect for a Space Harrier kind of game that vary from gliding across the seas to skimming across the sands of the desert. Once you get to the overrun landscapes of Air, at about the halfway point of the game, those darker, more evil-looking levels come in, much like the final levels of Space Harrier. Obstacles are aplenty here, and dodging hazards on the board is very important since collision damages you a lot. In the beginning, arrows will direct you towards safe areas on the board, but the game does eventually take off the training wheels, and things in the environment will fold you like a lawn chair if you are not careful. Boss encounters all have massive introductions with sweeping and panning camera angles, and these cinematics look fire. Bosses also feel and look familiar to Space Harrier enemies, even calling back a few like the orbs and the bone dragons, later introducing screen-filling colossi. This is where the Panzer Dragoon element comes in heavily, having you riding atop mythical creatures like giant swans, fish, and mammoth. The indicators on the board mentioned earlier also come into a few of these boss encounters, and being clear of those danger zones is crucial, otherwise you're about to soak up more damage than a ShamWow. Weapons and enemy fire are pretty easy to pick out on screen, with the neon egg bullets returning from the OG Space Harrier, but now you've got lasers, flames, and more ballistics than an Expendables film. The screen can and will get spicy, especially on the second act of the game. Enemies will flood the screen, and bullets are going to come at you fast and in good numbers. The game never really struggles even when the screen is going bonkers, and the art style and frenetic action play well off each other. Sound-wise is where Air Twister gets pretty interesting with its rock opera style soundtrack provided by Dutch composer Valencia. The tunes here feel like a cross between Queen's seminal Killer Queen album and Xanadu-era Electric Light Orchestra. This is probably going to sound like an odd pairing at first, but there are moments where it totally works. works. There's one boss encounter in particular that the theme feels like a Space Harrier track done by an orchestra, and man, it's pretty catchy. To balance out those more groovy tracks, there are several ethereal vocal symphonic tracks, so the balancing is quite the ride here. There's no spoken dialogue here, but the sound effects also have the feel of the arcade Space Harrier with chimes and signatures of the enemies entering the arena and firing at you. You've also got the iconic echoed scream of losing a stock in similar fashion as well. Explosions got some nice crunch to them, and the lock-on to blast feedback is pretty satisfying when they connect. The echoed roars of bosses when you defeat them also sound good here. There's even a few stock sound effects in here from classic sci-fi movies like when you charge your shots, so you're getting some variations as far as sound effects, most of which are solid. To sum it all up, Air Twister is a really fun and challenging rail shooter that has a fair amount of replay value to run through the game's story mode along with its arcade and extra modes. Granted, the more you play using your upgrades and items, Princess Arch can become a flying force of one, but the game does have some difficulty spikes in here, so it definitely keeps you on your toes, especially on the back third of the game. It's got all that similar style to Space Harrier, even if it isn't a direct sequel of sorts. The influence is very apparent. There's also a lot to unlock from weapons, attacks, and costumes, so there's a good bit to chew on here. If you're a fan of Space Harrier in any capacity, this is a must play. Air Twister gets an 8.5 out of 10 and comes highly recommended for on-rail shooter fans and fans of arcade games since you get a good mix of both here. For fans of the source material and past Yu Suzuki titles, this one is absolutely worth checking out if you're looking for something that's equal parts weird and fun. Even without the Sega branding around it, this has the feel of those 80s and 90s superscalar arcade games and it's just as fun. This is available on all modern consoles, PC, and iOS arcade. And I thank you so much if you've made it this far into the video, and if you find these videos helpful, that's awesome. I'm glad to use it as a resource. Check back often, we'll have more reviews and commentaries come up in the near future. But until then, take it easy and stay safe out there. I'll see you on the next one.